Oh no, oh no, oh no. Get out, get out, get out. Hurry, hurry, run.
Oh my god, that's terrifying. The whole mountain has collapsed. This is near Sanqiao. There are so many people here. Everything is completely chaotic. People can't even get through.
The Sanqiao agricultural machinery gas station has collapsed. Look, the rocks came down and crushed all the houses below. This is terrible. This is terrible. I saw that house get smashed instantly. There should have been people inside. There was also a large truck, a long-haul trailer, and it was hit too. There were many people inside.
On 9:08 a.m. on July 17th, near Wujiang Sanqiao in Pengshui County, Chongqing, a mountain slope that appeared solid suddenly collapsed with a deafening roar. Massive rocks poured down like a flood, swallowing more than a dozen residential buildings. Some were buried beneath the landslide, while others fell directly into the Wujiang River. Dust filled the sky, with sounds of impacts and explosions echoing one after another. A person online claimed that a fully occupied bus was buried underneath the debris. There were 19 people on board, 18 died and 1 survived. The survivor reportedly climbed out of the vehicle during the collapse and managed to hide in a gap between large rocks. The bus itself was completely crushed.
I don't know how many people have died. 5 or 6 houses inside completely collapsed, and another 5 or 6 houses outside were pushed down, all falling into the river. I don't know how many more people are going to die. The entire county's 120 emergency medical service and nearby firefighters have all been sent here.
Videos show that the road from Wujiang Sanqiao in Pengshui, Chongqing, toward Wanzhou has been completely closed off with security barriers, and traffic restrictions are in place. After watching the video, some people online said the Chinese authorities were once again putting on a rescue performance. They said the rocks that rolled down were even larger than the houses themselves, and that heavy rescue equipment would be necessary. Photos released by police online compared the area before and after the collapse. They showed that a large section of the once intact mountain has slid away. Some residential buildings have been covered by falling rocks and debris. A reporter said some of the massive rocks at the scene could weigh hundreds of tons, with a size comparable to a nearby building. Before the collapse, rocks had already begun falling from the mountain continuously. How many casualties were caused by the mountain collapse in Pengshui? Some people online estimated that there were nearly 10 buildings involved. Each building had 5 floors, with about 8 units per floor. Since students are currently on summer break and the weather is hot, many people would likely have been staying at home. Assuming each household had only 2 people, that would mean about 20 people per floor, around 100 people per building, and possibly around 1,000 people across the 10 buildings. The scenes described by eyewitnesses were horrifying. On the morning of July 17th, Mr. Hu, a resident near Sanqiao, was driving to work. Near Hualang Road, he heard a sound like an explosion and initially thought a fireworks warehouse had blown up. He watched the mountain collapse. He said, "The rocks coming down were huge. It lasted for 1 or 2 minutes. The dust was everywhere and I couldn't see anything at all." Mr. Hu immediately abandoned his car and ran in the opposite direction. "I just ran for my life," he said. "My legs went weak." Mr. Hu told the news that if his car had moved just a few dozen seconds faster, he would have been in the collapse zone. He said he heard people screaming and people jumping out of the houses. Ms. Xie Shanshan, a resident near Pengshui Sanqiao, said there was a fireworks factory near the site. Local residents heard a massive rock collapse in the morning, which sounded like an explosion. The mountain collapsed multiple times, and the ground had become unstable. More sections continued falling afterward. She estimated that around 12 to 13 buildings had collapsed, and she also saw a passenger bus crash beneath the debris. A resident named Wen was about 1.5 kilometers from the collapse site. He heard a massive noise like explosion or thunder. At around 8:40 a.m., he heard what sounded like firecrackers and saw thick smoke rising from the riverside. The sudden mountain collapse caused the destruction of a fireworks shop and the Pengshui Jingzhiyuan Hotel. Mr. Zhao lives across the Pengshui agricultural machinery gas station, less than 200 meters from the collapse site. He said, "A little after 8 a.m., I heard a huge noise, along with sounds like firecrackers. The power suddenly went out at home. I live by the river, so I opened the window and saw smoke rising near the riverbank. The water in the river was very muddy." I immediately ran to the road and saw the mountain collapsing. I ran as fast as I could along Hualong Road. The road has now been closed off. I don't know where I can stay tonight. I'll probably go stay with relatives later. Luckily, my home was not hit by the falling rocks. At around 8:40 a.m., Miss Liao was inspecting a sewage well along the Wujiang River when she was suddenly surrounded by thick smoke. I couldn't see anything within 1 meter. After the smoke spread everywhere, I heard a huge noise. Then, through the smoke, I heard the sound of massive rocks falling into the river and splashing the water. I immediately ran toward the road. I saw a young man who was fishing and shouted to him, "Run!" After I reached the road, I realized that the sewage well I was inspecting was less than 100 meters from where the rocks fell. A shop owner named Jiang said the moment felt like an earthquake. With one huge blast, the rocks collapsed. More than 10 buildings disappeared. Most of the people living near Sanqiao are small business owners involved in ceramics and construction materials. They should have been busy making a living that day, but instead they suddenly faced the reality of their homes being buried. A Chinese reporter said that from Binjiang Road, less than 1 kilometer from the collapse site, smoke could be seen rising from the area, and a strong, unpleasant odor remained in the air. It is understood that Pengshui is located deep within the Wuling Mountains, with steep mountains, deep valleys, and complex geological conditions. Local residents said the area had experienced continuous rainfall in the days before the incident, causing soil moisture levels to approach saturation. Eyewitnesses and rescue personnel said that the area may have involved a fireworks factory, which may have caused intense continuous fireworks explosions after the mountain collapse. Footage provided online shows that before the incident, an exposed section of the mountain appeared almost vertical, with sparse vegetation on the slope, and signs that may indicate artificial excavation. If the slope had indeed been cut to expand construction space, it could have damaged the original stability of the mountain. Several buildings were built directly on the foot of the slope, with little to no buffer zone or protective engineering. Combined with continuous rainfall that allowed water to enter cracks, the stability of the slope may have been greatly reduced, eventually leading to massive rocks falling and buildings being buried. The fact that some large rocks remained intact after the collapse also suggests characteristics of a rock collapse or rock slide, rather than a soil landslide. Similar cases are not uncommon in China's southwestern mountainous regions. Past landslides in places like Wulong have also highlighted how improper slope cutting during road construction and building projects can worsen disasters. A professional investigation will require comprehensive analysis using satellite images, geological surveys, construction records, and other evidence. It is not possible to reach conclusions based only on videos. However, public concerns are understandable. In high-risk geological zones, whether planning approvals or construction supervision strictly follow safety principles directly affects people's lives. China's Ministry of Emergency Management has now activated a national Level 2 geological disaster. Minister Zhang Chengzhong has led a working team to the site. China's geological disaster emergency response system has 4 levels, from Level 4 to Level 1. Level 2 is the second highest level. As of 2 p.m. on July 17th, 10 trapped people had been rescued, and none were in life-threatening condition. More than 1,100 people around the collapse site had been safely evacuated. Areas within 1 kilometer of the incident site had their water, electricity, and gas supplies suspended. According to local weather authorities, torrential rain was expected on the day of the incident. The heavy rainfall could further increase the risk of secondary geological disasters. At the same time, similar disasters have continued occurring in Yunnan, creating a chain of regional risks. Affected by persistent heavy rainfall, around 2 p.m. on July 16th, a sudden mudslide struck the Wudihu scenic area in Shangri-La. Flash floods carrying large amounts of mud, sand, rocks, and broken trees rushed down the mountain and hit the only road leading into the scenic area. Passing vehicles and many tourists became trapped. Some vehicles were submerged in mud halfway up their bodies. Fortunately, no one was injured or killed. Tourists and drivers were still shaken as they struggled to walk outside and evacuate. A mud accumulation zone stretching more than 200 meters formed inside the scenic area. Water in some sections rose above knee level. More than 2,000 tourists and over 300 vehicles were stranded. 9 vehicles were buried by mud up to above their wheels, and several vehicles from out of town were submerged halfway. Wudihu is located in Shangri-La, Yunnan Province. Hidden deep inside the forests, it is an undeveloped, ecological scenic area, preserving natural environments such as moss forests and grazing areas for cattle and sheep. Disasters in these types of areas often happen during peak tourist periods, making rescue efforts more difficult. On July 7 in Wudanjiang, Heilongjiang Province, rising water levels caused by upstream rainfall triggered a powerful flood that slammed into a floating bridge across the river. You can hear the sound of breaking steel. Multiple load-bearing chains securing the bridge were torn apart by the floodwaters. After losing the restraint of the chains, one side of the floating bridge suddenly lost balance. The entire bridge deck collapsed toward the river, twisting and hanging in the air. The railings bent and deformed, and the bridge structure tilted and collapsed under the force. The turbulent river rushed rapidly beneath the collapsed section. The broken bridge continued swaying dangerously, with the risk that the entire structure could be washed away. Some people online said that the floating bridge in Xingsheng village was an important local transportation route. The danger happened suddenly, but fortunately there were no pedestrians or vehicles on the bridge when it collapsed. After the collapse, the entire route was cut off. The flooding in northeast China and the mountain collapse in the southwest may have different causes, but both point to the same core issue: the impact of extreme rainfall on infrastructure and public safety. It feels as if China has entered disaster mode overnight. Typhoons, floods, landslides, extreme heat, and sandstorms have struck one after another. They've hit Guangxi, Hubei, Hunan, Gansu, Fujian, Liaoning, and Heilongjiang. More than a dozen provinces and cities have been hit hard in succession. Homes have been flooded, farmland has been destroyed, and countless families have seen their lives collapse overnight. However, so far, Chinese authorities have still not released complete and specific figures on deaths, missing people, or property losses. As people across the affected areas struggle through devastation, some have said that they've lived for decades but never seen such extreme weather. Cell phone footage shows village after village submerged by floods. In Guigang, thousands of teachers and students were trapped on upper floors surrounded by floodwaters. Countless victims have been seen helpless and in tears, yet Chinese Communist Party officials, including Xi Jinping and Li Qiang, have not expressed sorrow or taken responsibility. Instead, they continue making grand statements and presenting themselves in a positive light. On July 15th, before attending the World Artificial Intelligence Conference, CCP leader Xi Jinping once again staged a public relations appearance in Shanghai. He visited a residential community in Huangpu, where he said things like, "Think about what the people are thinking, and worry about what the people are worried about. Keep working over the long term to solve the issues people care about, and continuously improve people's well-being. And put heart and effort into doing good things, practical things, and solving difficulties for residents." Not only that, Xi also brought up flood control. He instructed local governments and relevant departments to closely monitor rainfall, flooding conditions, and typhoon developments, and to properly carry out flood prevention, disaster relief, and emergency rescue work. How will ordinary people in severely affected areas such as Guangxi, Guizhou, Hebei, and Sichuan react after hearing these remarks? Taiwan's TVBS News cited online reports saying that on July 12th, some Chinese people, angered by what they described as ineffective rescue efforts and bureaucratic handling towards the Guangxi floods, wrote slogans on bathroom doors, saying Xi Jinping stepped down, and "Where were you during the Guangxi floods, Xi Jinping?" On July 16th, Hotspot Weekly reported that the scale of deaths and property losses caused by the floods had reached a level that even top officials would not dare to disclose. The reason, it claimed, was that local governments were afraid to organize evacuations and move residents to safety. The report said that during the latest floods, some local governments had serious problems, including delayed warnings, slow decision-making, concealing disaster information, and refusing to organize evacuations. When disasters strike, some local officials may prioritize their own careers and avoid political responsibility. In that situation, natural disasters are no longer just natural disasters. Through bureaucracy, endless approval procedures, and fear of accountability, they can turn into human-caused tragedies that could have been avoided. But as political pressure has intensified in recent years, such situations have become increasingly difficult to avoid. As one person commented, "The more the CCP manages floods, the worse the disasters become. During droughts, they store too much water. During floods, they release it too aggressively. Before the natural disaster arrives, human disasters come first. Heavy rain combined with flood releases become a double weapon, destroying levees, flooding cities, and swallowing countless homes in an instant. Before disasters, there's negligence. After disasters, there's information control. They only care about maintaining stability, never about fixing the problems. Wherever floods strike, bureaucratic corruption is often behind them. What the CCP has always controlled is not the water, it's the people.